Okay, page Dalet. Gimel. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're back in our studies of Beyam Darkecha, and we're still in the introduction. The books have arrived. They're at Miriam's, so hopefully we'll get them up north in the next day or two. We'll have the books. Either way, I'll do the introduction from the screen because that's what I have photocopied. So we'll work that out. But once we have the book, I'm encouraging people to have the book. Okay, we're now over here in Os Bays on the part that's above the line. After discussing the idea of the pleasure in serving Hashem, the second point he says, it's called Hachrechi Lehesig Tam Baruchanias, the necessity to achieve the taste in spirituality. V'hinei, behold, Milvadzos, aside from this, Shahatanik hu inyan ikari mitzad avoda, besides the fact that pleasure is a primary aspect of our service Hashem, tzarich lasim lev, we have to take to heart, Shahatanik ba'avoda hu davar hachrech linefesh, the pleasure of serving Hashem is something that the soul must have. Why? And we kind of mentioned this one day last week from the Piasetz Rebbe. Katzorech ha'amuk v'yesod v'yoser shel hanefesh. What's the most important need of the soul? Hu hatzorech hamuchrich betanuk. It's what it must find pleasure. The soul must find pleasure. It depends what kind of soul and what kind of pleasure, but everybody needs to have that. So therefore, we're going to skip Dalet. It's not that important. Umamela, consequently, imchas v'shalom ha'adam lo yiskeh l'tanig b'avodas Hashem yisbarach. If God forbid a person does not merit to have pleasure in his service to Hashem, if you're not really enjoying your avodas Hashem, Zusakona atzuma. This is a very strong danger to the person. Because yiksha olav ma'od. Then it's going to be very hard for the person liskaber ala yetzer hara, to overcome the yetzer hara, shemocher lo, that sells him tanuge sheker, false pleasures. If you don't sense that you're having a pleasure in your Yiddishkeit, the yetzer hara will then be able to sell you false pleasures. Let's say a person who's very thirsty. If you're really thirsty, you'll even drink lousy liquids. Because you're so thirsty. That's why people, at sea, when they're mamish, parched, they want to drink some of the ocean water, but you can't. It'll kill you. But that's the idea. Therefore, we have a very unique type of yetzer hara that seduces people to think. Torah, they're going to convince you that the Torah even says that pleasure is a negative thing. He's going to fool you in thinking that a religious Jew does not have pleasure in life. And that's one of his tricks. But that's not good, because if he's going to tell you that, then you're going to want other pleasures. Because Yitzhak knows. If a person will make a mistake and think that pleasure is a negative thing, then okay, if the person it'll be very hard for the person to succeed. If the person makes this mistake and says Judaism does not believe in pleasure, it'll be hard to stick with the religion, because the Yetzer Hara will be fooling us to go against our nature. But the truth is, it's the opposite. Avodas Hashem b'tzuras amitis. If you serve Hashem in the right way, hirak im hanov etam glevish. It is only with pleasure and spiritual delight. Vatanaku davar kadosh v'nale. And pleasure is not a disgusting thing. It's a holy and virtuous thing. It causes cleaving and connection to Hashem. Because anything that a person has pleasure from, who nidbak v'nikshar elav, he clings to it and is tied to it. That's the nature of a person who you are attracted to things that give you pleasure. So therefore, it's critical. You need it. You're built to have pleasure. You need it. Hashem has provided the maximum amount of pleasure through avodas Hashem, and you have to feel that that is a critical thing, that you should feel this pleasure of serving Hashem. Okay, next point, Gimel. Oimek hatanuk, the depths of pleasure. And what's the deepest pleasure is hachiburim Hashem Yisparach, is a connection to Hashem. If we really reflect deeper on this topic, really, by definition, by perforce, a person has to have pleasure when he serves Hashem. It's not possible any other way. Why? The foundation of the emunah of Jewish people is lahamin biyichud Hashem Yisparach, is to believe in the unity of Hashem, which means she'ein od milvado, that there is no other reality besides Hashem. Besides Hashem, as we mentioned as the first principle, the 10 fundamental principles of the Baal Shem Tov. Now he just kind of reviews this a little bit. Dahainu, which means a Jew has to believe and know. Not only did Hashem create the world, and not only is he the king of the world and he runs the world, but also, just as we know, before the creation there was no other reality except for Hashem. So too, after God created the world, he is also the only reality. Ve'ein od milvado, and there is no other reality but Hashem Yisborach. Okay. And therefore everything else that seems to have been created, ain't kiyumatzum. They don't have any independent existence. Even for a moment. They only exist and live by the divine light that flows into them and gives them life and existence each and every moment. What do we call that divine light as it gives life? So this divine light that influences all creatures, gives them life, nikra nitzotzot. They're called nitzotzos, which literally means sparks. Dainu oros kitanim, little lights. Shenishpoim Hashem that they flow from Hashem to the creatures. You want to call it atoms, electrons? You want to call it that? Call it that. Whatever you want to call it. To give them life and existence. And any pleasure that comes from anything that's created, a fruit that has a sweet taste, hurak mehanitzotz shabo, it only comes from that spark. The spark is the source of all the pleasure. That divine energy not only gives the item existence, but existence as it is. And existence as it is means the pleasure we get out of it is coming from that divine spark. We could go in, for example, if a person eats a food that's pleasurable, the pleasure and the delight, it's only from the spark that gives the existence of that food. Because that's the only true reality of that. And pleasure only comes from that. But the physical food itself is only a garment of that. So again, you're looking at a luscious, beautiful tasting fruit. The fruit itself does not give any sweetness. It's a garment to the divine energy that is mamish, creating that sweetness on your palate. It's Hashem mamish putting the sweetness in your mouth. We make the mistake is to think the orange on itself gives me that sweetness. The orange can't do anything because it doesn't have any independent existence. It's not like these oranges exist on their own and give me fruit on their own by happenstance. Hashem is constantly putting energy into the fruit, and the fruit has producing the sweetness with the constant energy that Hashem is putting into that. And therefore we should reflect that from one little itty bitty spark that is enclosed in something physical, and a person has such delight from connecting to the spark via the physical thing that is encasing it. Now make a kal v'chomer. So what if a person connects to Hashem directly? You must have an awesome pleasure. It's not possible another way. If you enjoy an apple, you enjoy anything in this world that gives you pleasure, the source of that is Hashem. So how can it be any different? It's got to be much more. So it is. Therefore, with any attachment directly with Hashem, such as mitzvahs, it has to be its essential reality. So Nefesh Adam True has to have that pleasure. A mitzvah is a greater connection to Hashem than a fruit. Especially when you're engaged in Torah mitzvahs. Because Hashem has revealed, the light of Hashem is revealed much greater, and with different lights. The soul should have a lot of pleasure. Again, why we don't feel it? We are not connoisseurs of what the pleasure is. Now let's take a look at a couple footnotes that we've been running along over here. Okay, footnote hey is on this part over here that says that the true pleasure that you experience comes from the spark. So he says in hey, no creatures have independent existence. It only exists from the light that flows from Hashem constantly. Such a way, the truth, the only thing that really exists is the light. In of itself. From its power, because that's the reality. So the and the things that are created, all they are is a garment or utensil for what? To house the inner light that's constantly flowing into it. Therefore, you cannot consider them as an independent thing. It's a very important way to look at the life. You can't look at this chair, tables, all these things in life cannot be seen as an independently existing thing. They're all just energies from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that are just enclosed. It's a hologram, so to speak, of reality. Ulanivra, and therefore something that's created, Gamein Shum Koach Hasbi, has no independent existence. El Kol HaKoach Rak Shel Hashem, it all comes from Hashem. Here's the trick. El Hashem Yisrach Mistater, but Hashem conceals himself. Umagalas Kocha Va'ora, how does Hashem reveal his power and light? What is he showing? Derech HaNivram, through the creatures. But in the inner content, it's all him. It's all Hashem. Hashem is hiding. He's creating an amazing illusion. These physical things are receptacles for the light. Comes out. V'hanivrahu shaliach. Therefore, that which is created is a shliach shel Hashem Yisbarach, is a messenger of Hashem. That Hashem created to act with certain power that activates them. And the creature is responsible for its actions to do the bidding of Hashem, as the Torah has taught us. So what he's hinting to over here, it's a big point in this footnote, is that so each and every one of us live by that divine spark. And just like everything in this world that doesn't have free will choice does as it's told, so therefore we the same who exist only by God's will, we therefore have to be a good shliach, to be a good vessel to reveal HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why, all the other things in the world, they can so easily reveal it because they don't have free will choice. The son has to do what Hashem tells it to do. It doesn't have free will choice. Now, so it reveals so much. The human being with free will choice can choose to not reveal or to reveal. But it would be foolish not to reveal it. Why? Because you're only living with the energy that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives you. And you are supposed to manifest God's reality, that people should be able to see God's reality through you and through the pleasure that you have. So that is your free will choice. But as he's saying, if you can imagine the enjoyment you have from just the object that is covering up the spark, certainly if the source of the spark is connected to you, it's going to be even greater. And in Vav, he gives an analogy. Let's just speak it outside. Let's say you have a spoon of honey in a dish, and the dish is very sweet because you can taste the honey in the food. And if one spoon in a huge dish, you could taste the sweetness. So what if you go right to the honey jar itself? You're certainly going to have sweetness. It can't be otherwise. You can't tell me if I put 2 spoons of honey in a food, the food tastes sweet. And if I eat the honey, it's not going to be sweet. So if you enjoy something that God created, and it's because it's sweet because of Hashem, so how can Hashem himself be not sweet? So what's the real trick over here? So look at footnote Zayin. What's the real depths? The truth is, any concept of pleasure, any essential concept, comprehension of pleasure, hu hargashas hachibur shel hatanugim hemrak me'anitzus shel or Hashem Yisborach. Real understanding what pleasure is feeling the connection between the pleasure that only comes from the spark that comes from Hashem. That is the real understanding of pleasure. To have the pleasure in the source of what the pleasure is providing. And now that would be true pleasure. Because if you're just, we'll see, he'll say maybe just taking pleasure in the receptacle, that's not the true pleasure. It's you're feeling something good. But to know that that something good is from the spark that's from Hashem. So you got, by definition, if you're honest, you'd say, I'm taking pleasure from Hashem. However, one second, I'm sorry, I did a mistake. I was reading the footnote and then to the main topic, which is never a good thing to do. But it's just say it came out, I lucked out. Again, Hargasha Chibur Shel Hanivra Imor Hanabore. Right? It's feeling this connection from the created thing to the light of Hashem. Chibra and Hashama in Shrash. The connection of the soul with its root. That's the true definition of pleasure. One second, let's just finish this later. Is the connection of the creature with the light of his creator. But this comes out in many shapes and forms because there's different ways the pleasure manifests itself. But the root source of all pleasures, it's buried in Taman Sham Nitzutz Orloki. That's buried, that spiritual spark. Vanefesh misaneges rak olav. And the soul only takes pleasure in that. So let me just repeat this idea. He is saying the real understanding of pleasure is feeling the connection between the creature, us, and the light of Hashem, the connection of the soul to its root, not being fooled by the externals, but to be connecting to that actual root that you're feeling the pleasure of Hashem. That is the real Jewish definition of having pleasure. Yes?
So it's a lot, it's easy to understand when you're talking about a physical item and knowing and understanding that physical item is by Hashem and it's not in and of itself. Look, it's you're not. The understanding is that it's created by Hashem. But what about when you have mitzvahs that you have to do that inherently aren't enjoyable? Like, I don't know, checking for bugs. Like, how many people get excited checking letters
Okay,
for
so
bugs.
so Rick is asking, for those who can't hear through his mask and 6 feet away. So he's saying, I understand if you give me a tasty fruit and you're saying it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can understand that pleasure. But how about a mitzvah? When you're doing a mitzvah, I don't necessarily taste the sweetness of the mitzvah. And of course, they could be hard. All right, so we're just going to hold that thought. I'm not pushing it away because we have to first get to a lot of other things for that. But obviously, there's a way to taste it. There's a way to taste it, but we've got to develop a little bit deeper understanding. We can't get to there till we really can get past the rest of the physical world, And if we to the degree that we could understand that the orange, only Hashem is giving us the pleasure of that. Now you can understand this on a simple level. That I'm sure there are many times you get a pleasure of accomplishment. Don't you?
Of course.
Now, but you didn't taste anything. Nothing went inside of you. Whatever, you took on a project. Let's say you took on a project to help out people. And it was a difficult project. It took a lot of work, but it worked out exactly according to plans.
Right.
So now, where can you where can I touch that pleasure?
Right. It's not the work itself; it's the end result.
No, but it's more than that. But it's the feel. But where's your pleasure? What are you tasting? It's a different sensory part of the person. That goes back to the old 5 levels of pleasure class, starting with physical pleasure, then love, to higher levels of pleasure. So again, it's being a connoisseur of pleasures. You got to start with the simple pleasures, but there's deeper pleasures. Love, is that a pleasure? Yes. Can you touch it? Can you feel it? You can't touch it with your 5 senses, but it's there, and it's much better than food. Then meaningful things is a higher level of pleasure. So we keep going up the scale. So if you can understand that of what you're accomplishing with this, although you may not directly see the results, but if you're sure it is providing an amazing result, then you'll have a certain degree of pleasure from that. But it's more than that. You should be able to feel it too, as we will see. Okay, Dalit, now here's another trap. Tanugos hasheker shel hayetzer. The false pleasures of the Yetzer Hara. Amnam, this is where the tests in life are. Truly, afilu shemasi, even if the truth is, shekola tanugim herakman yitzer shalor Hashem yisbarach. Even the truth is, all pleasures just come from the spark of Hashem. So wait a minute. So how could bad things give you pleasure? How could eating treif, clams in mushroom sauce? I don't know what they have it in. How can you get pleasure from it? It's another. But for the free will choice, there is a power given over to the klipos, the shells that he'll explain. Lahatos is to fool a person, ulahatzik, and to stand to make it real for him, as if to present it, as if say there are powers outside of Hashem. That's the Yetzer Hara, to show there's powers outside, there's pleasures outside of him. That's the test. As the Navi says, Hashem made it equal and opposite spiritual realities. This as opposed to this. There has to be an equally opposing pleasure for you to have real free choice. If only listening to Hashem is pleasurable and not listening isn't, then it's not a test. That's got to be a test. And as opposed to the true pleasure of Hashem, is the imaginary pleasure of the shells. That is seducing and testing the person to pleasure from those wrong pleasures. But the truth is, but those pleasures from the side of the opposite, they're empty, false pleasures. As the Navi Shlomo says in Mishlei, Al tit'u lamata mosav. Do not desire his delicacies of the Yetzer Hara. V'ulechem ksavim. It is only the bread of disappointment. Okay, let's take a look at a little bit of this klipa action over here and get a good working definition of klipot. Let's see how far we can go before we got to stop. Oh, we can get klipos in. Klipos, what is klipa? It's a good term to know. Hukinu, it's a nickname, l'sitra acher, for the force of the other side. The other side, the not Hashem side. Dahainu ha-Yetzer hara v'chelius of the Yetzer hara and all his soldiers. That's what a klipa is a nickname for. And just as a peel, really it means a peel or a shell, just as the word suggests. Why are they called a klipa? Kikamosh klipa machas is a pre, just like a peel or a shell covers up the fruit. When some to the point where someone just looks at it from the outside superficially, you don't see the actual fruit. So the klipa covers over the reality of Hashem and his singular ownership of the world, and his being the root of all that. So when a person just looks at it superficially, it looks like the world runs on its own. It goes by nature. So the klipa of the coronavirus is the virus. That's the klipa. The klipa saying it's the virus that's killing. And Hashem has nothing to do with the virus. But that's not true. It's a superficial look at that. It is the energy of Hashem that is in the coronavirus. Avodas and costs money. And what is our service all the time? Lizor is it. Be very careful. And we got to peel off the peels. And get to the fruit. The fruit is the real thing we want. Shua emes hapanimi, which is the true essence. To see the reality of Hashem in everything. I'm going to leave you with a question that we'll answer tomorrow in Sif Test. So you're going to tell me it's the divine energy of Hashem. Let's say something that's treif, the divine energy in Hashem. So it's supposed to taste good, right? I mean, there's got to be something good, tasty to it because it's the energy of Hashem, right? So here's the question, and we'll leave the answer for tomorrow. How could the Yetzer fool you in their things that's things that are usher? How could it fool us into wanting things that are usher? And also, how can these things actually give you pleasure if they're not from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's an amazing question that we'll have to answer tomorrow. Okay.
Thank you, Rabbi.